But just like alcohol or whatever, I think it's really, I trust in a liberal democracy, I've got to trust the individual to know what's best for themselves and expect that they'll live accordingly, and they'll let me live and let live when it comes to me. And they'll trust me to make the best decisions for myself. So, you know, if you find that some people do get entered, and I know that it depends on the type of marijuana. Some marijuana is absolutely going to give you couch lock. Okay? Now, if you know you need to get up and go to work or have an exam or something, and you're smoking some chronic from BC that has given you couch lock, that's no good. But if you happen to know what you're doing and you're smoking something that actually energizes you, more power to you.
If marijuana is legalized, could it be like you know, GNC, they have herbs, but the herbs not like the real thing, like mixed with stuff and whatnot. Like if marijuana has positive reflections, like with glaucoma and whatnot, if it's legalized, could it be like watered down and do something and probably be more harder than it could be?
One of the things they found with alcohol prohibition, and this is probably true of drug prohibition, it's certainly true of drug prohibition, is, you know, if I'm smuggling something, I have a vested interest in smuggling it in the most potent form that I can. You know, if alcohol is illegal, I'm not going to open a beer brewery that's huge and I have to refrigerate everything and ship things in 50-gallon, you know, tankers. I am going to sell you 151 proof rum because it's just more bang for the buck. That is the entire economic behind crack cocaine. Now, one thing I left out today, I was an ethnographer for the University of Miami in 1987. I spent a year on the streets of Miami. What I was supposed to be doing was working with and documenting, writing about white IV drug users. And they literally had us in the get-off houses in Overtown and Liberty City. Now, there's a get-off house in Overtown that's been there for 30-plus years. It was such a well-established get-off house, we had a sign from the oncology department of the University of Miami, who was sponsoring the study, in there recruiting people for our study, okay? It's there for 30 years. I guess the cops just didn't know about it, okay? Everybody else in Overtown knew about it. And one of the problems Albert Einstein even said about alcohol prohibition is its worst effect is the corrosive effect in the community on the sense of law and order, our faith in the criminal justice system. We all know it's kind of a sham, and so we lose faith in the system overall, okay? But getting back to the point of, if I'm a drug dealer, I'm going to sell the most potent form available. I'm not going to sell, you know, bricks of cocaine if I can sell rocks for $3 that are basically better economics for me. Marijuana, basically perhaps the same thing. There's probably been a push to sell it in the most potent possible form, when in fact that on an open market, on a legal market, you know, maybe you could go out and deliberately buy some type of Afghan or you know, something that was not as potent and was not going to cause, you know, couch lock and so forth. So in a legal market, there's always much better control over the quality of the product. Okay? When I go, or when you go and buy a bottle of Budweiser, you don't really have a question about its quality. That's control. You're not worried that, did I just buy a bottle of wood alcohol? Is this going to blind me if I drink this shit? No. Okay. And speaking of regulated markets, when's the last time you saw two beer distributorships shooting it out over territory? They don't, because it's regulated. That's the other big issue that Myron attacks in his book, is the idea that it's prohibition that causes violence. It's not drugs that cause violence. It's prohibition that causes violence. Other questions?
There we go. What are your thoughts on underage cannabis use?
Here's my experience. In late adolescence, you can do an amazing amount of damage to your life in a short amount of time through choices you make. There's a critical juncture when you're 17, 18, or whatever, in terms of some things you need to accomplish in life, okay, to get to the next step. And if you don't accomplish those, you can really set yourself up for later failure, big time. And so I'm concerned when I see a young person who's involved with any drug, alcohol, marijuana, whatever, in that is distracting from, or in perhaps putting them in a position to make bad choices that are going to set them up for failure later. That's my position on that. Do I think it's inherently bad? Well, I don't think it's any worse than alcohol use, but again, I don't think that alcohol, you know, I mean, to me, alcohol is obviously the more dangerous drug. Nicotine's a dangerous drug. Here's the thing, though. When drugs are sold through a black market, or an underground market, the illicit market, whatever you want to call it, I don't think that your drug dealer cards you. Does he? Okay. There's a recent study that said there are 800,000 underage kids out there selling marijuana. Who are they selling it to? They're selling it to other kids. University of Michigan studies consistently found that it's easier for kids to have access to marijuana or other illegal drugs than it is alcohol. And there we get into the regulated market. If I am regulated and I've got a liquor license on the line, I don't want to sell to you, okay, if you're underage. If I'm a drug dealer, you goddamn right I want to sell to you. And by the way, I've got some PCP too and some shrooms if you want to buy them, because there's no regulation. There's only self-interest in terms of transactions. So do I think it's a good idea? I mean, I've got 4 daughters, and I don't want them to use marijuana or alcohol or smoke cigarettes until they're of an age where I think they can make good, sound choices for themselves. That would be 28 or so, right? Yes.
I haven't personally read the Andrew Sullivan blog that you're talking about, but I totally agree on the view that we need to come out and say that, you know, we're tax-paying, hard-working Americans, and the only thing that the only law that we're breaking is smoking, you know, a joint or something. I'm with SSDP, and how do we get that? How do we get people to not be scared to come out and say that, you know? Like, I mean, that seems to be like a problem that people actually...
Yeah, and I wish I had a smart answer for you, and I don't, and I would feel horrible if I left here and you guys kind of went out and... By the way, it's April 1st in Ann Arbor, Michigan, used to be the hatchback. I don't know if it still is. But this is the day, and it's my mother's birthday too, so this is the day every year where I disappointed her greatly when I was a teenager. I struggle with the same thing. I do cybersecurity and cyber warfare work nowadays for government. I have a clearance, and there have been times with LEAP where I've kind of gone off the books because I wasn't sure I wanted to be identified for my own, you know, I had to put milk on the table myself. I don't know, I think every individual has to find it within themselves to say, what's right for me, what do I have to lose? I think it has to be a rational judgment. So I don't know what's right for you in terms of, you know, taking that stand. I would say, go incrementally. I would say don't do something that's going to put you at risk. Unfortunately, the laws are set up in a way that they're really draconian. You know, they can, for some type of marijuana bust, they can end up pulling your student aid and all kinds of crazy stuff, okay? Now, we know if a person is a substance abuser, the best thing we could do is, you know, get them an education, get them on track, do all, you know, but instead, we make it harder. We make sure that they're even further at risk in society. Then, oh, see, it's a failure. It's a marijuana.